Welcome to Impacting Recovery Uncensored. I'm your host, Sarah Pritchard. This is a podcast where we dive deep into the real, uncensored truths about addiction, recovery, and everything in between. No sugarcoating and no judgment, just honest conversations that can help lift up the solution. So let's get started today. I am very happy that we have Kathleen back. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks, Sarah. I'm so excited to be back again today, too.
Yeah, I know. We were talking just now, being like, you're a pro at this point. And so today, this was actually your idea, which I love, to talk about why families and loved ones need their own help and healing. Somebody that just has a loved one in active addiction or recovery, whatever it is, why they need that healing, and what we do at Impact with our family program, and why in the world someone would even participate in a family program. Because I think a lot of times the focus is so much on the addict or alcoholic, where the families just kind of are so in the fire of like, I gotta, we were talking about this earlier too, like life and death for them. And so they get the help they need. And then the families are just kind of like back here, not necessarily knowing, what happened with them. And I like the analogy of like feeling like they're in the middle of a tornado and just like spinning around and around and around. And then you just kind of get spit out. And it's like, whoa, what was that like? And they can breathe because their loved ones in, treatment or program or whatever. So that's kind of, I feel like, a good place to go with it all. What do you think?
I think it's great. And we talked a little bit about the fact that we weren't really sure how it was going to go.
Right.
And we were just going to trust the process,
yes.
Right? So one of the things that you mentioned is you're right, like they get a reprieve. And so a lot of times when they're in that intensity, they experience that reprieve and they just, but then they don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Because they've spent so much time in this tornado and the unmanageability of the disease of addiction and alcoholism, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so they don't know any other, what do I do?
Right.
And very often I think, what happens, and we talked a little bit about this earlier too, is that a lot of people that work in recovery are in recovery, as it should be,
mm-hmm.
right? We talk a lot about how at Impact, the guys that are working with the guys, they're in recovery. They've walked this walk. They've, lived this journey, and they are on the side of being recovered
mm-hmm.
and have the ability to share that hope. The hard part about that is that their perspective is all about the addict.
Yes.
And it is urgent. It's a matter of life and death. Whenever someone comes through the doors at Impact, no matter what their health, no matter what, it's every single one of them, it's a matter of life and death because we don't know, what the next thing could bring,
mm-hmm.
right? And so we treat it that way, that seriously.
Right.
And they're right in front of us. They're right there with us. And, the families we kind of in the past have kind of put on the back burner because of the urgency of the person that's presented to us. And I think it was revealed to all of us that it was important.
Yes.
Right. And although I think Impact does a great, amazing job of staying connected with the families, right? Even before we started the family program,
mm-hmm.
they did their communication, each week with the family. They allowed the guys each week to talk to their family for a period, 10 minutes, whatever we adjusted. And then we also incorporated having our director, Chad,
yes.
speak to the families
right.
to just give them some guidance.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we started to talk about, though, is that it seemed like they struggled with understanding the steps.
Yes.
What were the men going through? What were they learning? What could they have as a conversation? And, when they talk to him on the phone,
right.
instead of talking to him about everything that's wrong. And it kind of reminded me of when I work with the military and someone's deployed. What do I talk about, right? And so that's where we started to explore some ideas. And we came up with the idea of doing what we call the Impactful Families program.
Yes.
Right? And so I think it was about being willing to look at a different perspective, not just the one that was right in front of us that was so obvious.
Right.
But that this person belongs to a whole system.
Mm-hmm.
And if we get this person moving forward and getting well, but we don't support the system getting well, they're going to step right back in that.
Yeah.
And what we know is that with the disease of alcoholism addiction, unlike any other disease, it's an entire family disease.
And I think that's probably, and you could probably speak to this, but probably hard for some family members to grasp that it is a family disease, because like they're the one that's, doing heroin. They're the one that's drinking vodka at 8 a.m., not
Right.
me. What do you mean a family disease? So can you speak to that a little bit?
Sure. Well, I want to share first, so the first thing that happens when a person comes to Impact is they fill out a form and they put their point of contact, right? And so we ask for an email. And so an email is sent out to the family saying, welcome to the Impactful Families Program. And we tell them about what's going to happen and that this is an action-based program. And that the action means they're going to be doing work, and we ask them to purchase some books, right? So the first book is Paths to Recovery, right? It's based on Al-Anon.
Mm-hmm.
It's based on the 12 steps. It's like taking your book, the 12-step book, and putting it in a family perspective,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's from our point of view. And then we also ask them to order this, which we now have a downloadable copy that I email to them as well if they can't order it, right? And so this is the workbook for just the fourth step. That's it. It's 90-some pages. So those of you that are listening and you know that when you do the fourth step, it's a lot of work. It's
Mm-hmm.
a lot of work for us too.
Yeah.
Right? It's a lot of introspect, looking at ourselves, how are we showing up, type of thing. So anyway, the first part, of course, is step one. So when we look at step one, we talk about the fact that, we have to admit that we were powerless over this,
Mm-hmm.
just like you guys, right? And that our lives have become unmanageable. And so, like you said, very frequently people will come on, they'll be like, well, I'm not powerless over this. My life's not unmanageable. I'm not the alcoholic or the addict. I pay my bills. I go to work. I do all these things, right? I show up for my family. How am I powerless? How am I unmanageable? And so I talk to them then about the understanding that the unmanageability, this disease is a family disease. The unmanageability is that as a family member, we are tending to spend a lot of time on their side of the street.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times just to keep them alive.
Right.
And so the unmanageability shows up when we don't sleep because we don't hear from them, or they're in the other room and we're not sure if they're alive or they're safe or if they're using, or, they've gotten in trouble.
Yeah.
And so our unmanageability is trying to hire an attorney or trying to, keep the shame down with
Mm-hmm.
people knowing about what's going on, right? Or very often our unmanageability as a family member is calling in sick for them at work,
Mm-hmm.
making excuses for them,
Yes.
and covering that.
Right.
And understanding that when we do that, we're really trying to shift our discomfort,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yes.
So once we start talking, that's just on the first page of step
There's a
one,
whole
right?
book in
There's
there.
a whole book. Yeah. And you could see like mine is highlighted, my book is falling apart, right?
Yeah.
And stuff like that because I've been facilitating this now for a couple of years, right? And it seems like shorter than that, but it's really been about 2 years.
I know.
And every time like people will say something, I'm like, oh, I got to write that down.
Yes.
And so another part that's really difficult for families to understand is not just, like you said, that I'm the responsible one. How is this my disease too? But the other part about it is that understanding that it is a disease
Yes.
and the importance for a family member. And so at first, sometimes it's difficult. Sometimes immediately they start just crying and saying, I didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know it was a disease. And what I always tell them is, look, it doesn't excuse their behavior. I'm not trying to excuse their behavior. I'm just trying to help us have a shift in a perspective,
Right.
right? In understanding the 3-part problem. So that's just page 1 and 2, just
Yeah.
to share it. We're not even like into the book, right? And so we talk about the disease
Yeah.
and that this is a disease, that their body is different than our body.
Mm-hmm.
That I explain from my perspective, having been in community mental health since 91, long time, right? A lot longer than some of the guys are even been alive, right? That, I thought the same thing. I thought, well, what's wrong with them? How come this person isn't getting well and all these other people are getting well?
Yeah.
or I thought, what am I doing wrong? What am I missing?
We hear that all the time.
Yes.
The loved one, whoever it is, even if it's a friend, or just from my experience of making amends. If I've made amends to friends, they're like, I should have been there more for you.
Yes.
I wish I would have known and I could have helped more. And it's so sweet. And we hear it from families all the time too. I think I made the wrong decision here, or what am I doing wrong? Why can't I fix this, essentially?
Right.
And you can't.
Right.
And the hearts are in the right place.
Yes.
But if you don't understand the disease, you don't know what you don't know. And so it's just why can't they stop? Why can't I fix this? I've been able to do all these things. I've been able to, pay their rent or help them graduate college or get the job for them. Why can't I get them to stop using drugs and alcohol?
It's true.
Mm-hmm.
And there's that. So it goes back and forth between this guilt and this shame that I haven't done enough to this frustration and this helplessness, which just fuels resentment and bitterness on the part of the family members.
Mm-hmm.
And rightfully so, right?
Yes.
Like you said, they've paid their bills, they've done all these things, and how come they can't get it?
Right.
And it does feel that way. Those are legitimate emotions to have, right? And so, again, talking about the 3-part problem, and I always do mind, body, spirit, but when I do this, I say body, right, because of the allergy,
Yes.
And then mind, the mental obsession, and then spirit, the disconnect, the spiritual malady that occurs. And so I say, we have a 3-part problem, we need a 3-part solution.
Yeah.
Well, we're in that 3-part problem too. Right. And so on the bottom of our page 8, and it was a dad, the very first class, I hope he gets to watch this, that said, Kath, it's the 3 C's. And I wrote the 3 C's because it basically, we didn't cause it, we can't cure it, and we can't control it. So when I talk to parents, we have a mixture of parents, children, significant others, friends, whatever, whoever needs to come comes, right? Aunts and uncles we've had, right? All that kind of stuff. But when we talk about this, so for parents, first 18 of their years of their life, right? They're responsible for them. You're on their side of the street. I mean, look at you, you got your kids going to Halloween you were talking about, and then, getting them ready for school, and gradually they start to do a little bit more, but you're over there. Mm-hmm. Right. And so then at 18 years old, we're supposed to say, okay, see you later. Right. You go ahead and launch.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, with the unmanageability of substance use, right, disorders or alcoholism and addiction, is that we don't do that because we think, well, maybe they need a little bit more. Maybe if I give a little bit more. Mm-hmm. So there's this constant state of being on what we call their side of the street. You guys in your work talk about, I've got to clean up my side of the street.
Right.
I talk to the families about staying on our side of the street.
Right.
Let them clean up their side.
Yes.
You've been doing that. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so that's part of the unmanageability. Yeah. So we're also talking to the parents, lots of times, and I just say it before anyone gets a chance to say it because I know they're thinking it. You're probably thinking, well, maybe when he was 14, if I'd have just taken him to a therapist. Yeah. Right. Or maybe if we didn't put him on that medication, maybe this wouldn't have happened. And I just say, stop it, right? Just stop it. Right? Bob Newhart, stop it, right? Because that's you didn't cause it, right? And no matter what you would have done at some point with this disease, it would present itself.
Yes.
Right?
Right.
And you did the best you could with what you knew.
Yep.
And same with when we get to, and part of it tells the stories, members share experiences about spouses pouring out alcohol, right? Or finding all the drugs in the house and destroying them and thinking that's going to work, right? I can control it. Or putting that 360 on the phone, right? I didn't know what that was until a wife told me what it was, right? Yeah. And that unmanageability that goes along with it.
Yes.
Watching where they are. It's my responsibility. I've got to make sure they don't go there.
Right.
Because if I make sure they don't go there, they won't use.
Yeah.
That's the insanity that we see on our side of the street.
Right. Well, and it makes sense. It's okay, they have these group of friends and they're really bad influence, so we'll just get them out of there and then this person will be okay. And it's the same thing for us is like you think you can fix it externally, but when you're talking about the 3-part problem and the spirit piece, it's the internal problem. It's the internal discomfort and pain, and it's not the circumstances. The circumstances are what fuel our story to justify, or at least for me, it was like to justify my drinking and using because of X, Y, and Z.
Right.
But everybody has different stories and different upbringings. And so that only shows even more how it's not the circumstances or behavior or at 14, I should have gotten them a therapist. This is something that's ingrained in us. And when you talk about the allergy, just for those who haven't listened before, so the book talks about essentially like an alcoholic like me has an abnormal reaction to alcohol, or a drug addict has an abnormal reaction to drugs. And the reaction is that I need more.
Right.
And I have no control, and I don't know what's going to happen once the substance goes in. Any mind-altering substance, I have no control. So sometimes it seems like it is under control, but I could not tell you that was going to happen. But most times, the wheels fall off. And so looking at that is just knowing that piece, that like physically my body reacts differently. If I had an allergy to strawberries, like I wouldn't eat strawberries. The problem is I can't not drink alcohol, even though I know most times it doesn't go the way I want it to go. And so I think just knowing that piece of like, oh, their body is actually different than mine, when I can have a glass of wine or two and be fine. When for so long we're like, well, why can't they just do that,
And that's part of what we really explain. This is the difference when someone has the disease, and that there's a very small percentage of our population that actually has the disease. There's people that drink too much, or I hate to say use too much, but they can stop.
Yes.
Given circumstances or, different events or whatever, but that their family member, their loved one can't. And very often they'll come in and be unsure. Well, I'm not really sure. Are they an addict or an alcoholic?
Right.
And so I explained to them that the men do something called qualifying, right? And there's like a process by which they do that. There's questions that they ask the guys. And if we were to discover that someone wasn't an alcoholic or an addict, first of all, the work would benefit them. But the other part about it is we'd probably have that conversation with them. Look, I don't think that you're an alcoholic or an addict. I think you just drink too much.
Yeah.
Right? And so that would be the conversation. And so I explained to them that really everyone that comes in has been qualified.
Yes.
Because there's been circumstances that have gotten them to the point that they're at that makes it very clear to another alcoholic or an addict especially.
Yes.
You're one of us.
Right.
And so with the families, really talking to them about understanding that there is a process and trusting the process. But they're so used to doing so much. I always tell them when we have a call, and it's a Zoom call, and there's a bunch of people, I say, we're all helpers. Let me help, right? And so what happens, though, is when we do that with an alcoholic or an addict, you talked about how, you kind of know that it probably isn't going to go, or you don't know how it's going to go. But sometimes people don't even know. Like there's this blank spot.
Yes.
And I explained the strange mental blank spot that was identified back in the 1930s.
Right.
And when I explained that, they're like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. They just don't see it.
Yeah.
These are people that as parents you've raised, to do the right thing and all that. They're still that person in there. But the disease is stronger right now. And so what we need to do is get that disease over here.
Yeah.
Right. And so the way we do that is they do this work.
Yes.
The way we do it for us in the family program is we do the work so we can understand how to support.
Yeah.
And we had a really cool situation. So it was probably about a week or so ago. I explained about this internal state of restless, irritable, and discontent. And I always talk about the fact, when the parents say, well, what if I did this when they were 14? I said, so if your child experienced restless, irritable, and discontent at 14, would you look at them and say, you're an addict, right? They've never used a thing in their life except maybe cold medicine or whatever, but it didn't have a negative effect because you were giving it to them. And then, so we wouldn't do that. Even a therapist wouldn't do that at 14 years old or 9 years old. So, but just understand that this state of restless, irritable, and discontent is what they're experiencing. We all experience it, but not on the level you guys do.
Yeah.
Okay. And
Yes.
untreated alcoholism, right? Or
Oh, yeah.
inactive. It's like you said, it's that internal state of discomfort.
Yeah. And discomfort is putting it nicely.
It's putting it nicely.
Yeah.
I explained to him it's like static on a radio. You know, when we used to have before Sirius XM, right? You know, we'd get static and we'd have this favorite song and we'd tolerate it for a little bit until we just couldn't tolerate it anymore. And then we'd change the station to one that we could receive good sound, right? For an actor or an alcoholic, when you experience, from what I've heard, when you experience that static, it's like 100 times more
Yes.
than what an average person, what you would say a normal
Yeah.
person experiences in discomfort.
Yeah.
Same with pain.
Mm-hmm.
When you guys experience pain, you know, people are like, well, they don't have a pain tolerance. No, it's not that. It's the internal state
Yeah.
that is now triggered. It's part of the disease. And so once you can explain that to parents and to significant others and family members, they're like, oh, that makes, and they'll come up with a story. Oh, that makes a lot of sense. That's why when this happened, that's how they reacted.
Right.
And they start to understand all of those things fall into place.
Yes.
Right. And so the story about the family member was the restless, irritable, and discontent. So last week, she mentioned that, and she's going to share it, I think, in an upcoming newsletter. So she said that she was talking to her son, and her son was talking about how he wasn't sure what was going on, right? He's been out for a while of impact. And as he was sharing some things, she goes, you know, that sounds like restless, irritable, and discontent that Kathleen talked about. And he said, wow, you're right. I forgot about that. And she said, I felt so empowered that I knew what to say.
Yeah.
Right? And so then I said, well, what did you tell him? She said, I told him to talk to his sponsor. I said, perfect.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's what we talk about. What can we, where we feel so helpless with this disease, we can't even, don't you start crying now because you're going to get me going. We'll be sobbing by the time we're done here. But it's so powerful because family members feel so helpless.
Right.
That's like the biggest emotion. And remember, we talked about helpless triggers fear.
Yeah.
Right? But if I have some tools myself that I know I can't cure this thing, but I could understand it, that lessens my helplessness. Right? And I feel like empowered where I'd have never felt that way.
Right.
With my loved one.
Well, and like, I mean, it's the same thing for us, but for the loved ones, it's like they can feel useful in a way where this dark, dark past that was so awful, just like the book talks about, turning our biggest liability into our biggest asset.
Yes.
And so that's why I got emotional because, like, here's the mom that's actually, and, you know, it's just like amazing. Like she gets it and she understands it and she gets to talk to her son open and freely, and he doesn't take it and in like a defense way. And he's like, oh, yes. And she's like, call your sponsor. And like nobody's trying to like put all the things in place. Like it's just like that is how it's supposed to be.
Right. But she wouldn't have known that. Right. And I'm not saying that she's not very intelligent. All of the families that come, I think, are very intelligent. Yeah. They are coming because they want to understand.
Yes.
Sometimes at first I think they come because they want answers about, you know, what do we do next, that type of thing. And so that's where we bring in the spirituality piece, of course, right? So we do the same thing you guys do. We do the serenity prayer. When I'm remembering, we start each group with a breath. We get quiet. We do the serenity prayer. Sometimes God really puts it on my heart to say the set-aside prayer.
It's a good one.
Yeah, set aside anything I think I'm going to learn today.
Yes.
And allow me to be open to it. And then I say, and also God, set aside what I think I'm going to teach and let me teach what you need them to hear.
Yes.
And so that's kind of what we say in the beginning.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's just been an amazing experience for me personally, you know, and then to be able to see how it's empowered the families.
Right.
And what I hear from you guys, you know, and the staff is that when they'll have the family calls, they're like, oh, they seem to really get it.
Yes.
You know? Because they're working the steps too.
Right. Well, and that's something that it just makes everything, like I'm just thinking of in the book, it talks about grow in understanding and effectiveness. It makes everyone be able to grow in understanding and effectiveness, not just the addict. And so thinking of like when they are doing those family calls, our team doesn't have to reteach
Right.
everything. And there's not enough time to be able to do that anyway, because how many calls have Colby and Schwartz had in the beginning of like, I don't get why they can't just stop. Like this is, and they're so angry.
Yes.
And like you said, rightfully so. I remember hearing a speaker tape one time talk about whatever their reaction is correct. Like it's correct because we've done a lot of really bad things that we wouldn't normally do. And it's all based out of fear, whether it comes out in anger, it comes out in silence, it comes out in trying to do more. It all looks differently, but it's all just everyone's terrified.
Right.
And so what I have heard too is just like everything is so much more efficient and effective on these calls. And then when they actually get to do a family session, you don't have to sit there and go through like the whole educational piece. Like there can actually be some real conversations and work done in that.
Right. And that's the piece. Like, so we always had the family session, right? And we would always have the family session towards the end, like the last week before they were getting ready to either go transition.
Yes.
Whether it was to phase 2 or another sober living or back home, right? So we would always do that. And you're right. I spent a lot of time either preparing the family for that individual calls, not doing step work, not even knowing about the step work prior to starting this 2 years ago, but just preparing them about the disease, right? Preparing them about coming in and hearing the story about what they'd experienced. And now what happens is they come in and they're just ready to share. Like they're sharing what they learned. On the phone calls, they're sharing what they learned. Hey, we worked on step 4 this week, and how difficult it was. Right. And I always find it funny that the guys will be like, if I say their family member was on, like, what are you talking to about?
I know.
They get nervous.
They say.
Yeah. Did they talk about me? No, actually, we didn't talk about you at all.
Yeah.
And they're like, what? Like, you didn't talk about me? Right? That's all they do is talk about me. Right? No, they're doing their work. Right? And so I think it's really great what I find that empowers the guys. They feel like they're going to understand me. Because for all their life, no one's understood them.
Right.
So we might not understand. I can never understand what you experience. I can do my best to empathize and learn as much as I can, but I can't feel it like you feel it. Right. Like if I've had a broken bone and you get a broken bone, I know how bad it hurts.
Yeah.
I don't know how your bone hurts, but I know what mine felt like.
Right.
Right. But I can't experience this like you. So it's really about teaching families how to have a better understanding. And then here's the biggest internal battle. Like you said, that speaker tape said, if they say all these things, they're right. So someone does all these things to you and then you love them. It's such a conflict.
Yeah.
So what we would think is to just stop loving them, to stop spending time with them if they hurt me that bad.
Right.
Like we can't even, right? I saw the look on your face when I said that, right? And some of them are coming to hear if that's what they should do. Like, is that what we should do? No, this is how to love them. At the same time, stay on your side of the street.
Yeah. And I think that is difficult or like what that actually looks like and tangible examples and tools that they can use moving forward. And I would think it is just so beneficial to be in a group setting to be able to hear from other family members of like, hey, we're doing this or we're doing that or this happened. Oh, this happened to us too. And like you said, with the mom that's been on there, like they can stay in the group forever.
Yes.
Which is
We
great.
have some that have been there for 2 years.
Yeah.
Right? A year and a half. And sometimes people go and then they come back. And they're like, can I do that? Absolutely. Right? And I think it's just like AA, the same thing. The door is open.
Right.
Right. And so just because their family member leaves or graduates, impact, right?
Yeah.
Whatever phase that is that they've gone through, or even if someone's come and they've left because of certain circumstances, we still have family members that come. because they know what they got when they started was that they didn't feel alone.
Right.
And that's like on page 1, that you're not alone,
Yes.
right? But also that they could get some more knowledge about what to do and maybe even feel okay about not doing anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And have you, people that, kind of going back to a little bit what we were talking about at the beginning, like families or people that are resistant about like joining the group, like, why do I need to do anything? They obviously get a lot of relief and freedom out of it. But I mean, how do you approach that if somebody is still in the mindset of like, you just pull up your bootstraps and, don't drink or, that kind of thing?
I'm just firm. Yeah. I mean, sometimes I say that, but with love, right? Because they're just hurting.
Right.
And so sometimes I always encourage families. That's why, like, from the get-go, when I know someone's like about to put their foot over the threshold at impact, I try not to send it before then, right? Because sometimes that happens and then they're like, no, I'm not going, right? Yeah. So now I wait till I know they're in.
Yes.
And they have a bed assigned, right? Which is pretty quickly. And I immediately send the email, welcome to the Impactful Families program, right? Mm-hmm. And because I think it's so beneficial if they can start right away.
Yes.
Some families will send me a message back, saying, well, can I start next week? You can start whenever you want to start, but they're starting today. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what I want them to understand. They're starting this today. So wouldn't it be great to be able to start step 1 when your family member's starting step 1?
Yeah.
And start to have that understanding. But again, like we talked about, sometimes the tornado is so crazy to think about when they finally go somewhere and they have this freedom to sleep, the family member. Mm-hmm. I don't want to talk about it anymore. That's all I've talked about for the past however many years or months or weeks or whatever. So I do get it too. So we don't push them to.
Right.
But what also happens is, so Chad does regular calls, right? And on the regular calls, if they're not attending, because I let them know, we have a spreadsheet of who comes and I put in, attending and what night they attend, or if I've just sent an email, right? And he'll encourage them. He'll say, it sounds like maybe you would benefit from going to the program. Mm-hmm. And that I try to offer enough times that it could be doable pretty much for everyone. So,
which I still don't know how you figure that out.
Yeah. How I make it work.
Yes.
Yeah. Some days I don't know how I make it work either. But so we have daytime ones and we have nighttime ones, mm-hmm. right? And some people I've had most recently, I've never had this until probably the last 2 months, where someone comes to everyone. They're just trying to get it all in.
Yeah.
Right. And I tell them, don't do this work fast. This is important, in-depth work for you, just like we're asking your family member to do. I explain to them, because the way it works at Impact, they're there 35 days, right? And so obviously they start at step 1 when they first get there. And I try to do that with the families, although it's hard because, there's a lot of people. Yes. Yeah. So the guys take a bit of time on step 1. It's so important, right? To understand the disease and how long have they resisted understanding it? Because I would imagine from your perspective, what's wrong with me? And so then when people tell you this is wrong with you, you're like, oh, that's what's wrong with me. And then that doesn't work. Yeah. Right. And then someone else tells you, well, maybe you have depression. Right. And so, oh, maybe I have depression, but you're still drinking.
Yes.
Right. And then they say, well, you're depressed because you're drinking. And it just doesn't make any sense.
No.
So you feel completely helpless and hopeless. And so I try to explain to them it takes a while for the first step because you've spent a lot of time being helpless and hopeless, not feeling not heard or understood. And so for us, it's the same thing, but we can go through a little bit quicker, right? Mm-hmm. And I don't check their work, whereas we check the guys' work, right? I tell them that this is your responsibility. So in the back of each chapter, just like our packets, the guys have, the parents or the family members have questions like the packets. And so I don't say, answer question number 8, right? I just say, answer the questions the best you can. And I share my experience that when I first did this book, before I started the first class, I would read the questions and some of them I would be like, oh, that doesn't pertain to me. I don't need to answer that question. And I would, like just think I was kind of didn't need to do it.
Yeah.
And until times going back, realizing, wow, it was I wasn't ready to answer that question or be honest about it.
Right.
Right.
And I think thinking of this community piece, I saw something recently. It was about like every human needs community. Like we seek it, we need it. And obviously there's lots of different communities, but to be able to have a community that has experienced something that you have and how that can help bring out more, like hearing somebody else talk about their experience can be healing for me. And like I've sat in a group with addicts and alcoholics and someone shares something. I'm like, oh yeah, like I forgot. And, or, oh wow, I've never thought of it in that perspective. Same situation in my life, never thought of that. And so I think this idea of community with talking about you're not alone and it can be, that's very like, okay, I'm not alone, whatever, but you don't understand. They stole $20,000 out of my bank account or whatever it is. But just the community is so, so key.
Yes.
Like, because the isolation piece, regardless, is what's the most painful, because then we'll just get in our head and be like, well, nobody understands, into the self-pity and guilt and resentment. And so if the family doesn't have the tools to be able to work through that, and then the addict comes out, they still have all that stuff that they're going to, and they can't not. Like, it's not like you're bad. It's just they've never seen it another way.
Right. Another lens, another perspective. And, you brought up the point about community. I mean, I want you to think of it from our perspective, right? So I go to work. No one knows that I live with an alcoholic. Yeah. No one knows that my child is an addict. I don't tell them. I don't go to work and say, and very rarely would someone do that. Right. And so we're embarrassed, we're ashamed, all of those things that we experience. So we're very isolated too. Yes. We don't have a community. Yeah. And so exactly what you said, this provides them a community. It might be the one place. And what I've heard people say after like attending the group is that they feel safer sharing it now. They're not embarrassed or ashamed, and even this disease is so difficult, right? So even family members that's family member hasn't done well, they feel they can share with someone else, like another family member. If they meet someone at work that's struggling, right? And they can share about this book and about this group, and they can give them some reason to have hope, not just for their family member, because they can't cure it. Right. But they can get well, even in the chaos, even in the tornado. Yeah. Because they learn how to step out of the tornado. Yes. And that's the goal, right? Like to be able, that's impactful families to impact the community and others, not just our little impact family, but to be able to have someone at work that has a son in active addiction and that family member to be like, oh, hey, I understand. Yes. And then the ripple effect there. And so I just, we have gotten just the best feedback about everything that you've done. And, I just think it's really special. And that's just something that I love about Impact, especially us being small, is that we truly do know every individual, every family member. Yeah, like we're all everything, and we can, we just had our alumni event, which I know you were on your cruise, and I meant to send you the quote this morning. There was like a quote. It said, "The time to relax is when you don't have time for it." Yes. And I immediately thought of you, and I was like, thank goodness she went on her cruise. Yes. No one deserves it more. But having that event to see the families. To see the families, right? And to see, because before there really weren't a lot of families. And now the families are coming and they're telling you what Impact has done for their lives, not just their family members' life. Right. And I think the other part that what you mentioned, I want to bring it up again, because although this is, the Impacting Recovery podcast, it's not everyone's going to come to Impact. Right. Right. And so what if you're a family member or, a significant other, a loved one out there, and you're watching this podcast And, I encourage everyone to connect with that community, to find that community.
Mm-hmm.
And just like AA or other groups, right, NA, any other group,
Mm-hmm.
there's groups that are really healthy and groups that aren't.
Yes.
I'm not going to say good groups or bad groups. It's just healthy versus unhealthy.
Right.
And so I would encourage you to find a group that's healthy.
Yes.
Find a group that's actually working the steps, that has this book and doesn't just have this book and read the steps and whatnot. They're doing the work.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can't find one, then you start one, right?
Yeah.
Because, you can read this book and start to have the ahas and sit down with another person and have even more ahas and then have even more. And just how can you do that and help each other out?
Yes. Yeah, that's a really good point, because you may have to go to a few groups before you find your people.
Yes.
Or you may get the honor and opportunity to start your own group. You just need one other person.
Right.
And that's it.
That's it.
And so, yes.
And I'd say even like at churches, right? Like it's a great guide.
Yeah.
And then how you expand it, So obviously when we talk about spirituality piece for us, the mind, body, spirit piece, we talk about God. God is referenced in the book, God of our understanding, right? And then I encourage people to share what's worked for them, what's been helpful for them. What are some, daily prayer meditation that they do. And I share what the guys do. I said, this is what it looks like. They get up in the morning, they do prayer and meditation. We're teaching daily disciplines, right? Just like drinking water.
Mm-hmm.
And then at night, they do prayer and meditation. And I encourage you to do the same thing. When your family member comes home, that might be a time that you have as a shared family to be quiet.
Yeah.
Right? And then we talk about 3 good things.
Yes.
And share that with the families and encourage them. They're like, well, what do we do when they come home and they have their cell phone? Do a family text. Do 3 good things. Just send 1 good thing.
Right.
But how can you reconnect, right? And that's the other part. Like at phase 2, we have more of an opportunity to work on some of those things with them is what am I doing to build back my relationships? How am I building my relationship with my loved ones, a significant other, with my family, with my extended family, with my employer, right? What am I doing each day to build that relationship? Because even before they've made amends, right, this is important.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, if they get out there and they have no idea how to rebuild that relationship, either the relationship's gone and everyone's still feeling bitter and resentful, or they have an opportunity to reconnect, to rebuild, and it'll look different, right?
Yes. Yeah. And that's so much hope.
Yeah.
And that's the goal. Because it is, like I said, it's dark and it's scary and it's not fun and it hurts. But there is so much hope. And, there's opportunity for everyone to recover.
Yes.
So,
yes.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing this and letting me come on and talk about it, because it is near and dear to my heart.
Yes. Well, same because of you. So thank you for everything you do and coming on and taking time out of your morning. And I'm so glad that you came up with this idea, because I think it'll help a lot of people. So
thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
All right.
And thank you for tuning in to another episode. I hope today's conversation has inspired you and opened your mind, maybe even your heart. But remember, you're not alone. If you found this episode helpful, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll have all the links to our website and social media below. But until next time, keep making an impact. Bye, y'all.